Hello, everybody, and welcome to the new episode of Fullfunnel Live. As always, two hosts, two co-founders of Fullfunnel, streaming for you from Valencia, Spain. And today, we want to cover maybe not that popular topic, but we believe very important topic for everybody who's in B2B marketing and sales. We want to cover unobvious bottlenecks that we kind of see every day with our clients, with conversations and with our peers, why different marketing and sales programs fail. Quite often you are aware of the typical challenges, right? There is no buy-in from sales, or maybe there is no budget, or maybe there is like a broken go-to-market strategy. We all know, like, let's say, fundamental issues, right? And that's not the goal that we want to discuss. Quite often, we hear this from the companies that seem to be aligned, right? Like they call it, we are aligned in theory, but we don't do anything in practice, right? Or when they try doing something, they tell us, okay, we are running ABM. We have alignment between marketing and sales, but we are not satisfied with the results. And the best proof for this happened last year in London. We were presenting at demand-based event in it was called Smart Day, with around 100 people, VPs of marketing,
and
CMOs.
Another 100 animals, I think, because of the London Zoo.
Yeah, but jokes aside, yeah, that was senior marketing leadership from B2B tech companies, and we asked initially, hey guys, can you please stand up if you are running ABM programs? Like almost the entire room raised their hands and stood up, right? Then we asked, okay, now please sit down if you guys are dissatisfied with your marketing and sales alignment and programs. And obviously ABM is a part of marketing and sales alignment, right? If you are dissatisfied, and almost all the room sat down. And that's the problem. A lot of teams initially, they don't want to talk about the challenges, right? It seems, okay, we orchestrated the program, we are running it, but why then it fails? If the budget is in place, if the resources is in place, if it seems they defined ICP, if it seems they selected right accounts, right? Why these programs are falling down? This is the topic for today's episode. And before we'll dive in, I would quickly introduce again our sponsor, company called DealFront, leading European intent data provider. DealFront, from our experience, is one of the, let's say, not that expensive solutions that kind of doesn't ramp up your budget, but at the same time they have a qualitative data. And with a recent merchant acquisition with EchoBot, they now provide you not only the intent signals, but also the databases of European companies. And if you are selling in Europe and you want to be GDPR compliant, DealFront would be your go-to solution, right? So the best part is as well, if you have intent, if you identify engaged accounts, you can quickly create the buying committee, right? And the solution, you don't need to log out and have another solution. So DealFront is a product-led growth company, which we all love, right? So you can sign up for free trial and evaluate the software for yourself. So the link is attached. Now, coming back to our main topic, what we would love to do, guys, is we created a list of these unobvious bottlenecks, and we would love to run a quick poll also to ask you to vote what you believe are the most challenging bottlenecks, or what bottlenecks you personally face at your organization, right? Or maybe if you're advising the companies, what bottlenecks you face with your clients. So let's quickly run that poll. Let's reveal the results. And you guys, there are multiple options you can select. So just click on the bottlenecks that resonate with you. And I would name these bottlenecks, right? One by one. So how to create visibility about new program, right? That could be either too much visibility or too little visibility. What's next?
The next one that we have is the one that we have just a vote coming in, lack of clarity in program and planning. The next one
is trying to do too much instead of focusing on few key channels and activities, 80-20, right? So far, let's say the bottleneck that got most votes.
Then the one I see here is skipping activities because you don't immediately see how you will scale them. This is something that we see very often.
Underestimating change management or not having change management, right?
That's
Another
a big one.
Quite popular bottleneck.
Another one is no leading indicators to evaluate early performance, especially with new programs.
Next one is involving too many people, right? And actually, I was tagged today in the post. It was about ABM pilots. Does it make sense to run a pilot? And the answer is really simple. Even if you have experience if you have done ABM for years, but for the organization where you are going to run ABM program, it's a new motion. It's the worst thing that you can do, running a mass program right off the bat. Why? Because of the previous challenges, right? There could be different expectations. A lot of people might misunderstand your program. They might have different incentives, right? They might feel that it's just another burden that marketing team creates for the sales. Sales could completely ignore the program. Or if they don't see a pipeline coming in 2 weeks, which is basically what will happen, you won't drive pipeline in 2 weeks, right? Then they start sabotaging the program and ignoring it. So multiple things. And of course, if a part of the pilot you present a big stack, investments, etc., you put yourself, you are digging a graveyard for yourself and for your team, right? So
for now and for future, basically.
For now and for future, right? Because then it would be hard to change management that's like ABM could work, right? So these things.
Then another one is not onboarding people properly and basically expecting them to just do stuff because you asked them to do stuff.
Yeah. Compensation structure, controversial KPIs. This is what I also discussed with Vlad, and we made several posts around that topic. It's very simple. Okay, we want to run account-based market, or let's say we want to run thought leadership, right? And we want to involve sales. Sounds good. The key idea is to create awareness among target accounts, educate them, nurture them. But KPIs for the salespeople remain the same. Let's say dials, cold emails, in-mails. Guess what happens next?
The activities, the longer-term activities get ignored. Of course, people are going to do what they're incentivized to do. And even when the KPI is a pipeline, you still may run into problems. We can address the nuances actually that you need to address there. And another one that we see very often is both individual, it has to do with the program as well, but it also has to do with individuals. It's basically people who may not be willing to step out of their comfort zone and just do what needs to be done, but also to say what needs to be said, or even like teams that simply are cultures that avoid facing a simple truth.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we see happening right now in the B2B marketing space is that, that somebody would be calling Fullfunnel, jokes aside. But what is happening in the B2B marketing space is that a lot of companies are kind of dealing with lead generation hangover, which means that they realize that lead generation doesn't work, right? But they don't dare to take a sober look at the lead generation performance, account to pipeline ratio, health of their pipeline, and prefer to kind of make a next sip of lead generation alcohol, if you like that parallel, right? Next, we have not identifying skill gaps and foreseeing ways to skill people, right? Basically, your team might not have the necessary skills, but you assume, okay, we have the team, we have the resources, we'll figure it out. Well, you need to foresee how you're going to figure out, right, how to execute specific processes, and you need to do it beforehand. Next one is having too many meetings. It's just a real problem. A lot of companies, they are simply handing out on the different meetings. that could be eliminated, or that could be replaced by a quick, WhatsApp chat or Slack chat or quick email instead of having all these people in meetings. It's insane how much time people spend on these meetings and they sacrifice time that they could spend on the program execution. And basically, quite often what happens with different marketing motions, the most essential parts, the fundamentals, right? Like buyer research, for example, messaging creation, account development, planning, these things are being ignored because simply you don't have time to do this, but you need to execute. So what you're going to do, you skip the fundamentals and you jump into the execution. And what you need to do, what you need to have for this, you need to have something that would help you to automate outreach, right? And in a sense, not only cold email outreach, but reach to target accounts through ads, whatever, right? Doing basically the air cover programs. So that's kind of a big challenge as well. Next one is about debugging.
Yeah, so what we do usually when you see us here every Thursday, we spend the whole day debugging our own processes, execution, like looking at the key programs, at the key processes that we run, and trying to figure out, okay, what are the top challenges that we see and the bottlenecks, and then thinking of practical solutions, diving deep into the ways in which we can improve them. And that's like been such a game changer for us. And this is something that we see in a lot of organization that is not done. And especially when you are starting a new program and there is, things that are changing in the market, when there are team members that maybe are joining, leaving, it's a dynamic process. Like some sort of a general ongoing review is really necessary to make sure they work well.
And the best part here is that, first of all, we are in trenches. We are working with our clients. We do the joint execution. So we are, okay, in that project, this bottleneck occurred. This is the root reason, but we have already addressed it in another project, and this is what have worked, right? So all the time we start thinking about this, and also how can we prevent that bottleneck? Ideally, yes, right? You need to, ideal way, it's like it's coming from the health practices, right? You need to prevent health problems before they occur, right? The same is here. Ideally, you need to mitigate these problems. And all of you guys, you have experience coming from different organizations, maybe from different verticals, and you have different experience. So it absolutely makes sense to sit down together and cross-share your experience. Hey, but we had this bottleneck in that organization, and this is how it was solved, right? So you come up with different perspectives.
Or you just come up on a Fullfunnel Live and you share your bottlenecks with us to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Not knowing what is good enough, right?
And I think it has both to do with the fact that you might get something out and what we see very often, like mediocre content that is not really making an impact on the buyers, thinking that that's good enough, but also very frequently kind of being stuck in a perfectionism mindset when you're trying to perfect something, and the perfection simply doesn't exist. The only way in which you can improve something is by actually launching and iterating, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and then improving it as you get that feedback from the market, instead of trying behind the closed doors to get to a perfect version.
Yeah, next one is not doing analysis and research. Partially we have discussed it, or running analysis and research but not implementing anything. We had an episode about running a customer research and turning insights from the customer research into actionable ideas, right? Because ultimately this is why you are doing it. Otherwise, any research, any retrospective, any analysis is just a fancy deck that you have that you can present. I have done it, but it doesn't move the needle, right? As simple as that. And last one, which we partially covered, right? Investing in tech too early.
Yeah, and it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. Basically, processes should come before tools. But I'm really curious.
And if you don't mind, I will just quickly share a really good example. We were doing a cluster-based program planning with a client that is selling to QA engineering teams. And what was really interesting, as partially we were interviewing subject matter expert about the challenges that that specific cluster faces, right? And the root reasons. So there was a set of different challenges, but the root reasons could be combined and presented as lack of clear process for releasing the products and lack of visibility. Basically, this is what the software enables, right? The engineers. Now, the key point is if the company doesn't have a process, right, then no software will help. Okay, you'll have the visibility, but what you're going to do with it if you don't know how to run a good release procedures, right? That's the key point. And unfortunately, we see this quite often in the account-based marketing space. A lot of companies come to us and say, hey, we have already purchased 6 Sense, demand-based, Terminus, you name, right, this software. But we are not satisfied with the results of our account-based marketing strategy. And that's not 6 Sense problem or demand-based problem. They are all great software. The problem is that this software is not incorporated in your processes, right? It can help you, it can accelerate some parts of ABM, but software is not ABM itself. So just to say, what I suggest to do next, guys, is that we have a few, let's say, leading bottlenecks.
Yeah, I was highlighting them here so that we can go through them.
And what I suggest, if you don't mind, let's name this, let's say, the top voted bottlenecks. And I ask you guys to share your questions. What questions do you have about these bottlenecks? What you are personally interested in learning? So we'll cover this. These top voted bottlenecks are trying to do too much instead of focusing on a few key channels and activities, right? Next one is keeping activities because you don't immediately see how you will scale them. Next, no leading indicators to evaluate early performance. And then we can cover the comfort zone and maybe lack of clarity in marketing planning. So please write down in the chat what questions you have about these specific bottlenecks, or maybe describe your situation, right? And we'll answer your questions. But meanwhile, we'll start covering one by one each of the bottlenecks. And let's start with the first one, right? Let's start with trying to do too much instead of focusing on a few key challenges and activities. I think the way how we're going to present it to you, guys, obviously it comes from our experience. First thing is why this bottleneck happens, right? What are the root reasons and how to address them? Let's start with the first one, 80-20.
Yeah, so what we see in a lot of marketing teams, especially marketing teams, is one of the things that we ask them at the beginning when we are starting to plan the new programs, ABM or whatever we are implementing there, is to share the current programs. And usually what we see is a long list of activities or their plans for the next year, if we ask them to share their plans for the next year. And they are, unfortunately, what we see very often is that these activities, first of all, there is kind of a little bit of everything in a sense. If we take, for example, channels and social media, like you know that a lot of companies are trying to be on as many social media as possible without having a good strategy on one of them, without like really figuring out at least one of them properly and then really using them properly. But also just a lot of activities that may not be well also connected. And one of our clients said it in a very nice way. He called this the random acts of marketing. And when you zoom in there, inside of every marketing plan, you see that there are actually a lot of opportunities where if you had spent a little bit of time thinking about how these different activities can be connected, or how you can leverage, let's say, you know, whatever maybe you're writing some piece of content and then you're running a webinar. Well, why not make sure that you are doing it around the same topic, so that when you're maybe sharing that content, you can then on the back of that invite people to the webinar, but then also synchronizing that with the activities of, let's say, the sales development team, et cetera, et cetera. But the core thing here is too many things, and too many things that are not very well connected, right? So what we like to do first is, when you're thinking about things like channels, and programs, what you want to do is, first of all, you want to figure out where are actually my buyers, right? So these are, as we all know, customer research and figuring out where the buyers actually hang out, and then making a priority of those channels, and then mastering those channels one by one, because each channel takes time to actually properly implement, to figure out, to see what's working, what's not working. The audience is slightly different, the expectations, the context, what the others are maybe sharing on those channels is going to be different. So this is like really important to start small, because that's the only way in which you can like build effective programs. And then another point that I wanted to share there is going back to what Andre was explaining about the pilot programs. So one way to deal with too many things is basically taking a step back and say, okay, based on the specific goal that we have for our new program, based on the customers, and if we go deep enough, we can address this in another episode, based on the clusters of the accounts, like what actually makes the most sense? What do we see maybe that we did in the past that already have some evidence that this is working? What are maybe some of the activities that are already planned and kind of set in stone that I might be able to leverage and actually use as a part of my program? And then focus on that kind of minimal viable program initially, making sure that you're doing it right before adding a lot of activities. Teams very frequently underestimate the amount of work that it will take to implement everything, and then end up doing a little bit of everything and not doing anything well enough.
Yeah, and that is a great quote. I remember, if you are a hunter and if you are running to catch two rabbits, you catch neither of them, right?
That's right.
So it's very similar, right? If you try to do too many things to create the visibility, quite often you won't excel at these things, right? And we see all the time that, especially in the conservative markets, conservative, I mean, not when you're not selling to market and sales, right? People who are hanging out on LinkedIn, who are easy to reach, etc., right? When you are selling in conservative markets, when you are selling to different conservative roles or hard to reach roles, right? Like engineers, CFOs, like procurement, etc., right? Doing something better than your competition already helps you to be ahead of the game, right? And it's just like we see it all the time. Quite often it takes 3 to 6 months to get the necessary visibility to become a recognizable brand on this narrow market, just because the competition doesn't do anything meaningful. Even the market leaders, right, recognizables, they still have a brand because of being category leader, but in most cases their marketing is very primitive. So like just focusing on 2-3 core activities in the beginning and excelling at them already helps you to be ahead of the competition.
One small remark here, just a practical one. Just go back, analyze all the programs that you currently have, up to the level of the CRM if possible. So understanding really how they're driving results, and then identifying on the one hand those that are not doing anything, and having an open discussion about maybe putting them on hold, if not completely stopping them, depending on your situation and what is possible in your organization. But then on the other hand, looking at those programs that are maybe like best programs, or those programs that are doing the best results, and seeing how can we do more of what works. I think this is a big opportunity for a lot of teams to like, okay, how can we double down? How can we do more of it? How can we do it better? How can we like maybe reach more people or more relevant people via these activities that we do right now?
Yeah, there is another good question from Nikki. What is the recommendation when sales would like target accounts list to be fluid?
That would be interesting to understand what he means by the word fluid.
Yeah, so if you can elaborate on this, but if you mean if sales want to target wish lists, if I understood it correctly, but let us know if sales want to target wish lists and request marketing to magically generate opportunities with a wish list. There is a good exercise that we highly recommend you to implement. It's called opportunity likelihood assessment.
Hola.
Like if you are in Spain, this is a very popular word, right?
Yeah,
which
with
means
the silent
hello.
H.
Yeah, opportunity likelihood assessment. What does it mean? It means that you sit down together and discuss. Like, let's make a simple question. If you are going to bet your compensation, right, on specific accounts, what criteria these accounts should meet, right? So you can bet on them. And just bear to me, in this case, a sales would obviously say, it would be fantastic if they are already aware of us. If they demonstrated high intent, you immediately follow up. What do you mean by high intent? They visited our pricing page, demo page. We know some of the, or we're already connected to a few people, right? Or maybe we have a good common connection, or maybe ex-customer joined that company. And there are some obvious business triggers. For example, they have a legacy software, or they raised a specific money, or whatever. They are working on a specific project, and we have noticed this in their corporate press release, right? Multiple things they would immediately tell you, because the key point is that in order to be able to convert an account in an opportunity, that account should be a problem aware, right? They should understand they have a problem or challenge that your product solves, right? They might not be looking for your product specifically, but they might be considering different solutions to solve that problem. B, that account is already aware of you, and doesn't matter where this awareness comes from the common connection, or from your thought leadership, or from your marketing, from your sales, doesn't really matter, right? And C, there could be some criteria that kind of turn odds into your favor, right? So, for example, they have whatever it could be, right? Multiple things. They changed leadership, or they're actively hiring for specific roles, or whatever. Doesn't really matter.
Actually, we did a full episode on that called We Want Revenue Now.
Yeah.
I believe that we really dove deep into how do you identify those accounts that are more likely to buy, and how you actually should break the accounts into two groups. The one with the high odds of turning into pipeline within this quarter, and those that actually are future pipeline. And then what to do with the one group and what to do with the other. And I think going back to Nikki's question, he had a more specific question that was what he meant by fluid. Sales would like to qualify those and add them to the target list if they hit all the qualification criteria. And actually, I think that the list should be fluid. And let me just explain what I mean by that. So imagine you are targeting within your program, maybe it's like a program around a specific vertical, maybe a specific cluster of accounts with common challenges. Whatever your kind of general target is, you will have a bunch of accounts in there. Let's say you will have 500 potential accounts in there, right? You won't be able to target all of them. So what you will do is you will use the prioritization as Andre explained, right? So you will prioritize them in some way based on obviously the ICP fit, but also some of these other criteria that indicate a higher likelihood, right? But then what will happen is you will work on those high odds accounts, trying to develop the opportunity, but you also need to work on the future pipeline. What that means is we are taking some accounts, maybe there is, like Nikki says, there is some engagement there, they've passed certain engagement thresholds and qualification criteria. And our goal with those is not to create an opportunity, but actually to warm them up, to create awareness, to develop relationship with the buying committee members, with the people in the buying center, and learn and validate whether there is a product need, an active need, a high priority problem, like you said, like Andre mentioned, and that we can solve for them. Okay, so once these accounts, I have enough relationship and I have basically validated the product need, I can then move them into high odds account for this quarter and work on them more in a more focused way. Okay, but then what can happen? I mean, usually we try to make each and every activity as focused as possible on this cluster, but it can happen that, for example, you may be like posting something on social, organizing an event, whatever the activity is, to warm them up. So we are working on a future pipeline. Well, what could happen is that our content gets shared, or somebody else comes to an event that is not necessarily from the group of the accounts that we are working on right now and actively. Well, yes, you can opportunistically, as long as they fit your ICP, there is enough engagement, they pass that threshold, I would definitely opportunistically include them. And it's like there's like so many different things to consider, but at the end, you have your capacity, how many accounts that you can work on in a very focused way, like the in-quarter focus, high odds account. You have capacity to work maybe one to few on a little bit larger group for future pipeline. And then it's just a matter of priority. And I would definitely prioritize recent engagement and signals for some accounts, unless I have really a super nice list of all of them engaged, which is probably not the case in majority of
the only one thing that you need just to keep in mind that not all intent was created equal. Visiting your blog posts, right? Or visiting, you know, like
bouncing of a blog post, or having 3 email opens, which is something that I've seen recently.
Or signing up for webinars, it's not the buying intent, right? But if there is like, if you can see the repetitive visits, and let's say in the last 30 days, and people are checking your integration pages, right? Specific use cases, FAQ about implementation, maybe migration processes, security, compliance, pricing, whatever, that could be a good indication that it's not, again, it's not the buying intent. Buying intent when they book a demo with you, right? But here it's just, it means that you are being considered, right? You are under evaluation. So the key point here, what I want to make is that intent doesn't mean that they need immediately, that your sales team should immediately pitch and you should retarget with your case studies and ask to book a demo. The first thing when you pick up that account, you need to kind of you need to go through that scorecard likelihood, right? How likely that account to be, can be converted into opportunity, and then answer the question, what do we need to know about this account to create a relevant offer? Maybe you have enough information and you know how you can sell, but if all you know is that they engaged, they have visited some of your pages, or maybe they even visited the pricing page, but you don't have any connections. This is unknown visit, right? It doesn't mean that it's buying intent and that sales should, because they have titles of the buying committee members, they would just send, you know, emails to 25 people saying, hey, somebody from your team visited our, you know, pricing page. Would you like to get a demo? No. So they should work on progressive profiling and collecting, and basically collecting the missing information, right? What do they need to know about this account? And first of all, it's the first 2 things are, is this account problem aware, right? And then where they are in the buying journey, because then your next logical steps would be matching your call to actions, right? Your actions with their buying journey stage. If they are very early, there should be a lot of change management education, and this should be your steps, right? You should be thinking about potential events where you can invite these people, content that you can co-create and distribute while profiling these people. So this would be the main recommendation.
The only one practical thing that I'd add here is it would be very helpful with you if you're like in this situation with your sales team, is to first of all agree upfront on the list of qualification criteria,
of course,
based on the evidence. So looking at your best deals from a specific target, and then have regular sales pipeline review meetings together with sales, like sales and marketing pipeline review meetings, where you can basically then consider those accounts based on the new evidence, new things that happen, new engagement, maybe a previous previous customer, let's say, moved to that account, and then practically decide together, does it make sense to prioritize this account, yes or no?
And we'll cover 2 more bottlenecks in detail, but feel free to share. So first of all, if we have addressed your question, if it helps, and yeah, guys, feel free to post other questions. Meanwhile, we'll cover 2 other, let's say, most voted bottlenecks. Next one is keeping activities because you don't immediately see how you will scale them. We see this, scalability obsession is a modern B2B marketing scene. Whenever something is being presented, the first question, hey, but when the revenue would come? Unfortunately, like a lot of things in our life they have a compounding interest, right? You need to give. I think the best way kind of to address it is famous Warren Buffett's quote, right? You can't get a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. Not possible, right? The same is here. So not all programs, even despite of the best stack or having bigger budget, would immediately produce you revenue. It's not B2C, right? It's not impulsive purchase. It's not like selling new IPA beer to Vlad. So that could be an easy targeting.
I think there is another aspect to this, is like specific like activity. So we are now, let's say, planning a new program, and we are saying, okay, one of the activities that we suggest here should be manual engagement of the target buying committee. And so when people then consider this activity, they might be thinking, but wait a minute, so we need to actually spend time manually engaging with that people. That takes a lot of time. If we want to address a lot of accounts, we can't scale this. I think like on that level, a lot of people, when they are evaluating different options or different activities or different programs, they may be thinking, okay, how can I automate this? Or how can I make it like immediately scaled to a lot of buyers, accounts, whatever? And well, a kind of like nuanced answer here would be, or nuanced remark here would be that, first of all, you don't necessarily need to scale to 100 or 200, 1,000 accounts. This is one of the recipes for failure, trying to scale too early and also trying to scale to a too large number. You're usually working, like we described, on the 2 lists. Your high odds account to have an opportunity in the current pipeline. That may be a list of
accounts you are going to bet your compensation.
Accounts that you're going to bet your compensation on. You know, you might have like 3, 5 accounts per SDR, for example, that you are working on like that intensively. And then you might have, let's say, the order of magnitude more that you're trying to engage in kind of more one-to-few manner. So if you're having too many accounts, that's already kind of a red flag. And then the other thing is also, when you're considering scaling, what you need to consider is not just the effort and the number of activities, but actually the ROI. Now, if it takes me, for example, 1 hour every day to engage with my list, but I am able to generate opportunities from 20% of my target accounts, and these are high ACV opportunities, I'm generating with these manual activities, I'm generating a much better ROI than you might generate from a much more scaled approach where your account to pipeline ratio is like less than 1%. And by the way, these are real numbers that we see every day, right? And so think about not just how can I scale an activity from the perspective of the effort, but think about how I can scale it from the perspective of the ROI. And just one final thought. When you're doing something for the first time, when you're rolling out a new program, there are a lot of things that you might do initially manually that you later may figure out, A, were not necessary. So why scale them? Just remove them. You might figure out some high value activities that don't need to be scaled, need to stay high high touch. And then there will be activities that you will eventually figure out how you might eventually scale that. But there is no need to rush and think about it up front and completely exclude some really good ideas and programs, activities, etc., just because you don't see immediately how you're able to scale them.
But the most interesting fact is that lots of growth comes from seems to be not scalable activities.
Yes,
that's the reality. And just to wrap it up, it's what literally we said, right? You always need to have these two lists in mind. High odds accounts, right, or active focus accounts that if you'll go through this opportunity likelihood scorecard, they are likely to be converted this quarter, right? You can accelerate the understanding where these like accounts are, right? And if there is, or at least you can get a current status really fast. If there could be an opportunity, or if there is no opportunity, or that if there is a postponed opportunity, you just need to continue engaging, right? While all the rest, which we call future pipeline, you can basically proceed with them two ways. The first one is what we explained, right? You can continue progressively profiling and building relationship with these folks, educating and nurturing, and your KPI is moving part of these accounts to high odds, making them aware of you, right? For example, driving them to event like this, Fullfunnel Live, right? You might run your field events, webinars, etc., right? So having more engagement and interactions with these folks and building relationship with the buying committee. Or you can try to squeeze maximum, right? Squeeze maximum juice out of your, let's say, lead generation orange. Yes, you might generate some pipeline that quarter, but again, the problem is that a lot of companies don't think about the consequences. The consequences are hidden right now. Okay, I have my targets, I need to do this. But what happens with all of these accounts that you pitched, or basically, which you, I know that not everybody likes this, but for me, unsolicited called outbound pitching is just a spam, right? So like, let's say all these accounts that were spammed or pitched by SDRs, right? Multiple times, that went through all this infamous 21 touches cadence through LinkedIn emails, right? Leaving voice messages, emails, etc. So, and they ignored, they didn't reply. Do you think that you can put them into another cadence next quarter? No way, right? So that's the problem. So think about the consequences all the time, right? What are you sacrificing by generating short-term outcomes? And to wrap it up, because for many folks it's not clear, but I just want to say it, right? Short-term outcomes come from focusing on these high odds accounts. When you make the personalized interactions and you both as marketing and sales, you plan the steps, how you can accelerate opportunity development with these accounts, right?
And to get more of those accounts, you can only work on getting more of them in future.
Exactly.
And that is the balance between the future pipeline and the high odds accounts for this quarter, which I think it's a good segue into the next topic about
leading indicators.
Leading indicators. And I mean, if you look also at these two different groups of accounts and two different groups of activities already, just to begin with the simple KPI there, obviously for those accounts that are high odds accounts for this quarter, they should have pipeline as a KPI. The other group where we are working on future revenue, where our goal is actually to understand and qualify whether they have a need and build relationship, build awareness and relationship. There we might be looking at KPIs to begin with are the engaged accounts with a conversation, the account penetration, how many of the target buyers was able to engage in a conversation. And then these are already two different kinds of KPIs. And because we are looking at the future, this is already a leading indicator, right? This is a leading indicator of revenue. And I love to look at like we mentioned already, the account to pipeline ratio. But as a leading indicator, you could look at account to a conversation ratio. So if you look at your list of accounts that you're working on, with how many did you manage to book maybe a non-sales discovery call? With how many were you able to have a meaningful chat, maybe on social or email, without yet maybe getting into an opportunity? With how many were you able to maybe have multiple touches and then extract some information? Because your goal there is also to, like Andre mentioned, the progressive profiling, or figuring out what you need to know in order to be able to qualify the need and create an offer that makes sense to that account. So these are all the early indicators that you could use for the future pipeline.
Yeah, and just to structure it, make sure that you onboard both sales and key stakeholders on this, right? First of all, you need to get acceptance on the company level that not all accounts are in market. Just because they fit firmographics, it doesn't mean, or they demonstrated some intent and demand base, right? It doesn't mean that they are in market. You always need to kind of go through this OLA scorecard, right? Opportunity likelihood assessment. And just to, when you look at specific account, you literally need to have this checklist. What do we need to know about these accounts, right? So, which means, as Vlad said, one of your KPIs for future pipeline would be how many accounts are qualified, how many accounts went through the scorecard, and we collected the missed information, right? And basically, all your KPIs should be focused on it. And then it drastically changes the behavior of sales and marketing. Instead of coming and pitching because they need to get meetings booked, right? They come and they can do micro content collaboration. They can start adding, they can start leaving meaningful comments on LinkedIn, for example, or in specific communities, right? Or maybe having these conversations on the events and asking like simple questions that basically are coming from your account scorecard, right? You collect this and then you cross-share. You collect the next one, you cross-share. And then what Vlad, when we were discussing doing too many activities in parallel, quite often there is a lack of information cross-sharing, information visibility, right? Or like what we call account blindness. One team is not aware what another team did, right? So for example, we went to the industry conference and we were able to chat with people and we got some answers to like questions from our account scorecard to qualification, right? But the rest of the team is not aware of this. So for you, it's essential you share these insights and then at one point you say, okay, we know enough about that account. So we are ready. We know exactly what challenge they have and how we can help them. And that's completely different story because now you start creating personalized engagement because now your focus is being shifted to how can we present this solution to this account and generate opportunity, right? And you also think about what change management needs to be in place, right? So they would buy in the solution because ultimately, guys, it's the reality. Sellers don't close the deals, buyer close when they buy in your solution. And that's it for today. We covered 15 major bottlenecks, then we covered 3, let's say, core bottlenecks and a great question from Nikki about collaborating with sales on fluid lists. So I hope that you get a lot of insights. Let us know in the chat if that was helpful, if that was insightful. You can just type your favorite emoji. And in 1 week, we'll have a new episode of Fullfunnel Live. We'll bring in Morgan Ingram and talking about marketing and sales playbooks. So stay tuned and looking forward to see you in 1 week. Cheers. Take care.
Thank you.